Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another Second Breakfast podcast. I'm Andy Roth, alongside Phil Duvall. Say hi, Phil.
Hi, Andy. There is a really, really old person right next to me, and it's very confusing.
Why is there this old person
he's not
encroaching on our territory?
The funny thing is he's not old. He's just older than anyone we've ever had on the show.
That's true.
He's not actually old. Are you old, Dallas?
I'm old.
Okay. All right, so here's the deal. Next to me, I can't tell what direction he is for the viewer, but sitting in the cyber studio with us today is my friend and former colleague, Mr. Dallas Clemens. Say hi, Dallas.
Hi. Good to be here, Phil.
Yeah, man, it's awesome to have you. Awesome to have you. Dallas is an English teacher at the school where I used to teach. He still teaches there, and I think you only teach AP English to seniors. Is that correct?
I only teach seniors.
Okay.
I have one class that's not AP, but 4 sections of AP.
And then what's the other section you're teaching right now?
It's a poetry class for
awesome.
Other seniors.
Now, Dallas, aside from being the oldest guest we've ever had on, which I'm going to bring up a couple times, I also want to say that this is the first time we've had a guest on Project Melway. So we're going to have some viewers that are actually going to watch this that have never watched our Project Melway segments before. So let me tell everyone what that is. Or Andy, why don't you tell everyone what that is?
I shall go ahead. Many moons ago, a shadowy organization known as the Gibsonian Institute tabbed the Gibsonian Institute. For those who are just watching us for the first time, the Gibsonian Institute does not exist.
The first rule of Gibsonian Institute: there is no Gibsonian Institute.
Right. The first rule is the same as every other rule; it just doesn't exist. The Gibsonian Institute tabbed us to spearhead an initiative that they called Project Melway. Project Melway, wherein Phil and I take every single acting credit that Mel Gibson has ever had.
Yep.
And watch all of them in chronological order.
Yep.
I'm not gonna lie, it's been tough sledding.
That's an impressive feat.
Well, Dallas, you'd appreciate.
And we have like 6 months left to go. It's just absurd.
The best part is we're probably in the best part of his career right now, and there's so much more to go.
Yes, and today. Seemingly every stage actor at some point in their career has to play this role, and so not unreasonably, Mel, MG, thought that he should play this role. Phil, what's our movie today?
Our movie today, okay, I'd like to say the year was 1990. Mel Gibson, at the top of his form and fame, is asked by Italian director Franco Zeffirelli of Romeo and Juliet fame to star as, are you ready for it? Hamlet.
Hamlet.
Wait for it.
Hamlet.
Wait for it.
Hamlet.
The most important play in the history of the world.
Fair.
And made into a movie by many people, of course, most famously Laurence Olivier. Mm-hmm. And then probably second most famously Mel Gibson and Kenneth Branagh. I don't know. We'll talk to Dallas about that. But anyway, so this is a movie that, if you look at Gibson's filmography, he's just made Lethal Weapon 2, and then he goes and makes Bird on a Wire, which is a trifle of a film, lovely but total trifle. Air America, which tries to be important and fails
miserably at that.
Or fails beautifully. I'm not sure. However you want to look at it.
It's still fun to watch, but in terms of being important, it fails miserably.
But when you look at Gibson's career, Franco Zeffirelli, Frankie, watches MG's suicide attempt scene in Lethal Weapon and decides the perfect person to play Hamlet. That's actually what the Wikipedia says. So he casts Mel Gibson, biggest actor in the world at this time, as Hamlet. Shocking. So we decided, so Dallas and I were having dinner the other night, and I mentioned casually that we were getting to the point where we were going to be watching Hamlet. And I said, I bet you have some opinions about that. And Dallas was like, well, actually, I'm teaching Hamlet, like, now-ish. I go, when? And he's like, right now. I go, we need to have you on our show. So what kinds of things do we want to know about Dallas? Dallas, we want to know a little bit about you.
All right.
What are your qualifications for being on this?
I'm not sure I trust you, sir.
How many?
Prove to me you
how long
deserve
have
to
been
be
teaching
in the hallowed halls of the Gibsonian Institute.
How long have you been teaching Hamlet, Dallas?
I have taught Hamlet for 15 years.
Okay. And exclusively to high schoolers?
No, actually, I have taught it at the college level too. I wasn't even counting that.
Okay. Well, la-di-da.
It's the one text I wouldn't take out of the Hamlet of the AP curriculum. So I've switched out most of my texts. I've not taught anything else for the whole time. But Hamlet, I think, is essential for AP.
You can't, if you've gone through high school on an advanced level and haven't read Hamlet,
right?
Something has
You
gone
haven't
wrong.
gone through high school on an advanced level.
Right. I think that's right.
Yeah.
Okay. That's fair. And
it's
as
a
I
good
was
one to teach to
watching
that
it,
age group too.
what's that?
I said it's a good one to teach to that age group too. I mean, it's Shakespeare's most important play, but it also works really well in a high school classroom. Ophelia works well. Hamlet works well. They get into those characters more than
Indeed,
that's
and
really
maybe we'll talk about that at some point, because Mel's actually a little old to play Hamlet when he does. For being the single most important play and the single most important role in the history of the English-speaking theater, it's a fairly young man's game, you know.
Right.
How old is Hamlet supposed to be, Dallas?
Well, in the Gravedigger scene, he reveals his age to be 30, which actually makes no sense to the rest of the play. I mean, Ophelia can't possibly.
That's in Shakespeare's lines, or that's Mel Gibson?
No. It's in Shakespeare.
Oh, okay.
It could be a typo. It could, the Shakespeare texts are pretty unreliable in places.
Okay.
Wow. Okay.
Ophelia can't possibly be more than a teenager, and I think a lot of people feel
why? Because she's single.
She's single. She's so obedient to her father.
Okay.
Her brother and her father are looking out for her. They're concerned about, and so if she's 17 and Hamlet's 30, that's a very different sort of relationship. So I think most people think of Hamlet as younger than 30, more like 20. And just kind of ignore that line where the gravedigger says, "I've been digging graves for 30 years, and I started on the day Hamlet was born."
Ah.
Nice. Okay.
Kenneth Branagh was 36 when he played Hamlet.
Yes.
Yes.
I think Olivier was older than that. Really, yeah. Ethan Hawke was the only in the films is the youngest of the Hamlet.
Fascinating. How old was I mean, the other famous movie is Burton.
Right.
Richard Burton, and I imagine he was older as well because he was established fully.
Somewhere in the 30s.
Olivier was 41.
41. And awesome. Are you looking at ages?
I am looking at ages.
The fascinating thing about Olivier is the actress who played Gertrude, his mother, I think is 29.
That's ridiculous. Stop.
Well, full-blown Oedipal on that.
Well, speaking of Oedipal, and we'll get there. Yeah. We'll get there with this movie. Glenn Close is only a few years older than Mel Gibson.
Although I thought they pulled that off okay.
I did too. In Phil's favorite movie of all time, The Graduate, Anne Bancroft is only a couple of years older than Dustin Hoffman.
Right.
I think I'm not okay. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, if I'm remembering what it would have been like in 1990, I do think you wouldn't have been surprised to go to a movie and find Glenn Close and Mel Gibson playing a couple.
I was thinking that during the scene where they kissed.
Yeah.
Yes.
In Hamlet, as mother and son, or actually at the very last scene. By the way, folks, if you're watching this, we're giving tons of stuff away about Hamlet. It's way beyond the point of spoilers at this point. It's Hamlet. Okay?
Yeah.
So when she dies at the end and he's cradling her, I was like, this could easily be husband and wife.
Yeah.
But I thought that the way that they played it, even with the kissing, I didn't feel like it was. I didn't have any sort of Oedipal. Personally, I didn't feel like that was the case.
But I don't know what to think of it. I really don't. I'm not. I always show that scene to my class because I think it's very interesting.
So let's start with it. So let's start with that. Let's start with that, Dallas. You mentioned that you don't show the entire. You mentioned before we were on air that the way that you approach Hamlet, aside from them reading the text and discussing it with you, I assume, did they read the whole text?
Yes, we do.
Okay, so then you show various clips from very different movies and filmed stage versions.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So can you give us the rundown of what you show?
Well, generally, I will show the first soliloquy.
But I mean, you mean from Gibson or just all of them, or what do you mean?
Oh, I'm sorry. Just from the Gibson, what do I show?
Yeah, like, what other episodes do you show? You show Mel Gibson's.
Yes.
Olivier.
Branagh. There's a TV movie from the end of the 90s with Campbell Scott.
Okay.
Like in the antebellum American South.
Sure.
Ophelia, Polonius, and Laertes seem to be slaves.
I wish Tarantino had done that.
Give him time.
There's a video of the Kevin Kline Broadway version. It was filmed for television. Most recently,
I heard this Hamlet was just killer.
When I was in school in New York, it was on Broadway, and I couldn't get a ticket, and everybody raved about it. I think the videos. It's hard for me to watch videos of a play.
Yeah.
Unless I just really can't do it.
Yeah, that's tough.
There's a Peter Brook that was in Paris.
Oh boy, yeah.
An African American actor, Adrian Lester, playing Hamlet.
Peter Brook just troubles me. Okay, now we're getting too theater.
Anyways, a lot of that stuff. Yeah.
So when you show the Gibson version, what scenes do you show from the MG version?
I try to show as many to be or not to be's as I can.
Oh, okay.
Right. So just to kind of get a different sense of what's going on there. I will show the bedroom scene with Mel Gibson and Glenn Close for sure. I'll always show that. I always show the Ophelia Mad scene, which I think is kind of interestingly done. They cut it into two pieces.
Yeah.
Right. If depending on time, I like also to show, even though I don't like the fact that they take a lot of the Hamlet and Ophelia exchange and cut that.
It's really weird.
Just to be or not to be to it when they're sitting at the play.
Yeah.
But I like the way they do the play. Where he's talking to her at the play. I like that.
I liked the way they interacted, or his interaction towards her, really, because she's so passive.
Yes.
But didn't like the way it was ordered. It was frustrating.
I agree.
Andy,
I find the whole movie, as a movie, I like it, but I find it, as a Hamlet, I find it troublesome.
Interesting.
All in all.
As a movie, but a Hamlet, it's troublesome. Andy?
I am likewise troubled. I am likewise troubled by, every director has sort of two jobs, right? They have to direct the actors, but they also have to make a movie, right? Yeah. I think Zeffirelli did a killer job of directing the actors. The performances in this movie are great. And by the way, before we get too far away from it, yes, he directed Romeo and Juliet. They're both really hot. It's a movie, blah, blah, blah. But I think his best movie is Taming of the Shrew with Burton and Elizabeth Taylor. I mean, that is, that's a good movie. Yeah. I love that movie. And maybe the reason I think it's my favorite is because that might be the first Shakespeare movie I ever saw. My dad showed it to me well before I was 10. And so I basically got 30% of the play, if that. But whatever. So I think Zeffirelli did a great job, and both of you feel free to agree or disagree, directing the actors. I think I might go so far as to say making a movie, he kind of spit the bit a little bit. I don't think he did a very good job.
Oh, okay. Give us why?
Okay. The biggest thing, staging, the blocking, meaning the movement of the actors, you wouldn't think that's all that important in a movie, but you have things. I think the person who got it the worst was Ian Holm as Polonius, who is killer in this movie. He is great. But I'm going to get theater artsy-fartsy for a second. Every movement has to have intention, right? If I walk from one side of the stage to the other, I can't just be moseying. I have to have a reason to go from here to there, right?
This is why people used to smoke on stage. Because they had to get up and walk over and get a cigarette. Like, that's actually why.
That's right. Polonius, everybody does it. No major character is exempt from this awfulness, but Polonius seems to get the brunt of it. There are a lot of moments where he is trying to talk to someone, and he's walking in front of them, and then he stops and waits for them to come and catch up. Yeah. And then he starts walking again. It's like, what? Stand and talk to these people. Where are you going? It's just infuriating. Yeah. It's just because I'm like, why am I watching your legs, Ian Holm? I want to be listening to your words because the way you're saying them is amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why is it okay? I like it. Why is it trembling as a Hamlet for you, Dallas?
Maybe even kind of in a connected way to the actors moving around and without much motivation. I can't quite figure out who this Hamlet is. You know, I think we mentioned the Oedipal possibilities there. There's something definitely going on with Glenn Close and Mel Gibson.
At the very least, they are a very, very close mother and son. And
everybody knows about the Oedipal, you know, the essays about Hamlet, and Freud mentions it in Interpretations of Dreams. So you're going in there, I think, wondering, are they going to do the Oedipal, or what are they going to do? And
wonder no longer.
Yeah. And of course, that's almost impossible because in Freud, it's buried in the unconscious. So you don't know that you have this desire for your mother, and really, the mother shouldn't be putting the moves on you or looking at you. That has nothing to do with it. But I guess that you have to communicate it to the audience somehow that's. But at no time do I ever feel like Mel Gibson is
openly lusting after his mother.
Well, no, and he shouldn't be doing that because it's unconscious, right? He should be not killing his uncle because his unconscious is saying, you can't do that because if you do that, you might learn that you do have these desires for your mother. But you don't know that.
Interesting.
But I don't really feel the delay even is very emphasized here.
I think trying to make a 2-hour Hamlet, and I've not. Now here's the thing: I haven't actually seen like Olivier's or Hawks, or I've never actually watched like an abridged Hamlet before. Yeah. The closest thing to an abridged Hamlet I've been a part of or seen was the 2 times I was in Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead. So I was Rosencrantz the first time I did it, and Guildenstern the second time I did it, and the last time I was ever on a stage was for Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. That's the closest thing to an abridged Hamlet I know. I don't.
Well, I mean that's basically the entire play, right? I mean that's basically.
But it's at least 2 hours, 2.5 hours long. It's not 4 hours long.
Fair. You're right.
We're gonna get into Rosencrantz and Guildenstern in a second, but I'm not used to an abridged Hamlet, so for me the whole it's like how do you communicate? Like you said, who is Hamlet? Like who is this guy?
Like for instance,
Shakespeare actually takes 4 hours to help you understand who this guy is.
Right. And some of the scenes, I think the gravedigger scene, I like that. I like all the actors. Paul Scofield, Alan Bates. I think they're all doing a great job. I like the guy who plays the gravedigger. I don't know who he is, but that scene's much too short. I think that should be very powerful. That Hamlet's been thinking about death in this very spiritual sort of sense and what happens to us, and now his questions are all, how long do we lie on the earth before we rot? Now I know what happens when we die.
It doesn't really feel like it's clear that Hamlet's been thinking about death.
I know, exactly. That's right.
Other than to be okay, I want to get into this real quick. Did you like his to be or not to be soliloquy?
It's not one of my favorites, no.
Tell me why. Because I liked it, but I'd like to hear why you didn't.
Well, I don't dislike it. I guess he doesn't seem as thoughtful as he ought to be, because I don't think he's suicidal. Right? Sometimes you see actors doing this. The Campbell Scott, he breaks his glasses. He takes a piece of glass. He's actually holding it up to his wrist, like, I'm going to kill myself right now. I don't much like that version either. I think it is more of a philosophical exercise about is it better to be or not to be. I just don't get the intellect of Hamlet in that speech as much as I would like to.
There's an aspect of that speech that because the great and a lot of this is where you abridge and how you abridge. The great question of the play often is Hamlet crazy, or is he intentionally playing at being crazy to suss everything out? And that comes to a head whichever path you choose.
Mm-hmm.
To be or not to be is the centerpiece of that, right? Mm-hmm. And so whichever path you choose, he's clearly a smart guy. His tragic flaw is not that he's an idiot.
Right.
Right.
That's really interesting. I really liked his To Be or Not to Be, but only as it fit into the movie. I didn't think it was any great shakes, but I didn't think it was bad. But I thought that his Hamlet, and this, again, agree or disagree, I don't think this Hamlet is crazy at all. I think he is absolutely...
I thought that was fascinating. He played it really sane.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it was interesting.
Everywhere he could play it sane, he was sane. And almost, if I can use this word, it's a very physical and muscular Hamlet, right? And that is borne out in the To Be or Not to Be.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought it was interesting. He didn't bully his way through the speech. MG was, we call Mel Gibson MG now, by the way, Dallas. We've been with him for so long. MG is, like, really nimble in this part.
He is. He does.
What I found really fascinating about his decision in the To Be or Not to Be soliloquy is he begins it and ends it quietly and kind of quickly. Like, he doesn't do this whole, like, to be or not to be. He like walks in and he's like, to be or not to be? That is the question. And then he goes into it, and then as he's leaving, the last line is almost an afterthought as he's walking out the door. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was kind of interesting. It wasn't this sort of like, moment. So I don't know. I guess I was still the entire time being like, I can't believe Mel Gibson is Hamlet.
Well, you started this off by talking about how old I am, so I'll tell you that I was teaching English and had been teaching English for a few years when this movie came out.
Sure.
And actually, Beth and I, my wife and I, went to an English teachers convention, and we both kind of remember this, that maybe Mel Gibson spoke at the convention. We didn't see him, so it would have been like after we left or something like that. But we came back with swag. You know, we have a button from the movie and everything. It was really promoted, but everybody was just shocked. Like, Mel Gibson? Yeah. Are you kidding me? And so when we saw it, it was like, hey, you know, he can do Shakespeare. He can do this.
Yeah, I think he did it. I think he did it.
I do too. I'm just not sure who his Hamlet is.
I think he was something that Roger Ebert said was that he was a lighter Hamlet, and not lighter like not weighty character, but lighter like he doesn't like because he doesn't play it insane and he doesn't play it mopey. He played as a guy who's basically a normal guy who sees his dad's ghost and figures out that his dad was murdered,
right? And
is really mad at his uncle and probably mad at his mom too. Because he's not really sure how much his mom really has to do with this. And I found that really interesting. I mean, that when you look at the whole interaction with Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, it's just pure anger.
Yes.
Andy's been burning to talk about Rosencrantz and Guildenstern.
I really want to talk about this and Dallas, I would love your take on this because this is something I have never seen Rosencrantz and Guildenstern done this way. Or I should say Hamlet's reaction to them, and I think it fits right into the he is not crazy at all take on it. One of the first things that Hamlet says to Rosencrantz and Guildenstern is, good friends, you know, like, how you doing, right?
Right.
And every other Hamlet I have ever seen is like, oh my God, it's so good to see you, and then over the course of that scene, it's like, oh my God, my uncle and my mother sent for you.
Yeah.
Literally, no one in this world is on my side, right? That's how it's normally played. But in this one, it's like
the moment he sees them,
Claudius and Gertrude like went through a roster of his college chums and picked the wrong ones.
Yeah.
It was like, good friends, and every time he says good, it's so sarcastic and so it's just like from the word go, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern like, oh, you're gonna die.
There's never a moment where it seems like he likes them, or so it's never a moment where he feels like their betrayal is real.
Right, I agree with that. Yeah, and I like it too. I think
it works.
It's neat to see new things, and I like you. I had not seen that in any of the others.
I had not seen. I mean, it's a lot of that stuff. This is the thing about this Hamlet that gets you through it, aside from the fact that it's really short, which is that the way they choose to do almost everything was something I hadn't thought of before. Yeah. I mean, the final scene, the fight scene with him and Laertes, he's just ridiculous.
They keep pulling out the bigger.
Yeah, but also he feels like he's having a good time.
Yeah.
Like he's got this thing under control the whole time.
Right.
And it's really interesting to see a Hamlet that basically feels like he's got it under control.
Yeah, and I think that kind of goes back to the thinking about death thing, because normally he goes in there and he said to Horatio, my time's up. Basically, I know when I go in there, I'm not coming back out. And he kind of goes in often, and he's very theatrical about it, and he sort of enjoys playing to the audience and having some fun. But I mean, you get the sense that Mel Gibson thinks he's walking away. He's going to go in there. He's going to get his revenge,
which actually works. Which actually works for not only I think it works for the film, because in that it's that thing where Hamlet dies in the play where he's like, I'm slain like 1,000 times. I'm dead. It's like Paul Rubens in Buffy the Vampire Slayer when he gets stabbed with the ruler. And
right. So when he finally gets to the rest is silence, you're like, thank God.
You're like, you don't mean it. You don't mean it. But the idea that he's actually never really fully bought the idea that he was going to die until that moment. Yeah. Like, he's so furious when he realizes it. And the violence with which he has Claudius is awesome. Like, I actually thought for a second he was just going to take the goblet and just Tarantino him in the face or something. I really was waiting for it.
Yeah, everybody's death. All 4 deaths in that final scene, I just love the crap out of.
Yeah.
There's something else in that scene that I don't know that I've ever seen before. It's not just in that scene. It's the character of Gertrude. I had never seen her so fully just made aware of Claudius's plot.
Yes.
Like, I didn't misread that, did I? Like. Well before the final unraveling of everything, Hamlet full-on gets her on his side, right?
Yes, absolutely. The play
makes her realize what's what.
I'll mention what they do in the Ethan Hawke version, which is the modern one.
Is that the one with Bill Murray?
Yeah, Bill Murray's Polonius. And Gertrude, the wine goblet is going to Hamlet, and Gertrude grabs it, knowing it's poison, and drinks it. Wow. I've never seen that before.
I just love that you can do this stuff.
Yeah.
I'm going to make a pitch to you guys, okay, for why this could be the definitive interpretation of Hamlet.
Oh, for crying out loud. All right, pitch away.
I don't believe it.
Sure.
But here's I don't believe this, but I'm gonna just go to bat for my guy MG. Although it's not his decision, it's Franco Zeffirelli's, clearly his vision.
Yes,
but here's the thing. True. All that we've talked about, Dallas, you're like, he's not that existential. He's not that moody, we've all said. He has fun. He doesn't quite buy that he's actually going to die. But it all does work within the frame of things. Here's the other thing. If we make Hamlet so moody and existentialist and sort of like mopey, but do we sometimes and we get he's into his head so much, don't we lose sight of the fact that Shakespeare was making hardcore pop entertainment? And wouldn't it make sense to have a character that was, I mean, like Mel Gibson's character, the way he interprets it and the way Zeffirelli does it, might actually work really well for Renaissance era or English Renaissance, whatever it is, 16th century. Was it 16th century England?
About 1600 this came out.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
16 or 17. I mean, wouldn't that actually make some level of sense because it's a pop character and we treat it not as pop. And I ask, oh, by the way, Andy.
Yes.
One of the reasons this is a good question to ask our friend Dallas is not only is he an English teacher, but he was going towards a PhD in American Studies with an emphasis on pop culture.
Awesome. Love
Dallas,
it.
Shakespeare, wasn't he a pop artist?
Absolutely.
Okay. But
Yeah, I think there's a but there though with Hamlet. He really writes a revenge. I mean, the genre is revenge tragedy, and yet the whole point, as you say, if you watch the whole thing, and they probably didn't do it at the Globe because people were standing up while people urinated all around them for 4 hours, 5 hours, you know. But
so this wouldn't have been meant for the Globe.
Well, it was written for the Globe. It was probably a cut version, an acting version, which is weird too, you know. But it's a revenge tragedy where the guy doesn't get his revenge, and he delays 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 and he delays. And then, if you notice, he doesn't even kill Claudius until after Laertes tells him, "You're dead. You've been hit by the poison. You have but a few minutes left to go." And that's when Hamlet can finally kill Claudius. So I think the delay is probably important. I don't know that he has to be mopey. I don't like a mopey Hamlet either. I like the Nietzsche Hamlet, who is that he's so much smarter than everybody else that he's figured out that nothing he does is going to make any difference. He sees through everything, right?
Okay.
And that just kind of, he wants to work all this stuff out about death before he dies. But I don't think he has to mope.
So he kind of knows how it's going to end, but he's just got to figure out how to get there?
Or get himself motivated to do it. Nietzsche says that action requires the veils of illusion. And I love that quote. I always tell my students, it's like...
Say it again. No, wait. Hold on. Say it again.
Action requires the veils of illusion.
Okay. Now,
I tell my students,
for us a little bit.
I sign a paper, and I tell you, it's a 10-page paper, you have to write it, and I tell you that when you give it to me, I'm going to throw it in the trash. You're not going to work very hard on that paper, right?
Right.
You have to fool yourself into thinking I'm actually going to read the paper.
Right.
Which is complete nonsense. I would never do that. But let's just say I pretend that I'm going to read the paper so that they do a good job on it, so that they have the veils of illusion. Anyway, so Hamlet can't act because he knows it doesn't make any difference. Something's rotten in Denmark.
Wow.
He'll kill Claudius, but the next king's going to be just as bad. You know, it's all crap. Rosencrantz, Guildenstern, Ophelia, Gertrude.
Wow.
Yeah.
They're all bad people.
Andy, you probably already thought of that. I love this. This is great.
No, that's. I mean,
I don't think that Hamlet has to be mopey. You know.
So who's your favorite Hamlet if you had to? If you had to. And you can get as nerdy as you want.
I suppose Branagh.
Okay. Yeah.
The movie's too long.
I feel like that didn't get nearly as much respect when it came out as it should have.
Yeah, it was like I think it was the last Hollywood movie to be in 70 millimeter. It's got this
Really?
nice cast, right?
That is correct.
Robin Williams, Billy Crystal, Charlton Heston, Gerard Depardieu.
Chuck Heston is so good as the player.
So good.
Maybe the only time I would say he was really good. He is perfect as the player in that role.
Come on, you didn't like him in Ben-Hur?
I haven't seen that movie in a long time.
Okay, well, he's quite good at it. Don't let your politics get in the way of loving.
I like the Planet of the Apes.
Ramesses.
No, he's so good in Ten Commandments, man. Him and Yul Brynner.
I mean, he is.
By the way, there's a whole scene where Yul Brynner and Charlton Heston basically do a pose-off with each other. They're like, "Have you seen the pyramids?"
No, I like Ten Commandments because I like Edward G. Robinson.
All right, good. Yeah. Moses isn't the leader anymore. See? We're getting way off topic, Andy.
Charlton Heston as the player king something that I love, just sort of taking a step back and thinking about it, he is so mesmerizing.
Yes!
And yet, you get to the end of it, and you're kind of like, I can see why that's usually cut.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, it's a very hammy speech. I mean, Shakespeare does a great job in writing really bad. The play and the player king speech, they're just not the poetry of Shakespeare.
Here's the deal, right? Here's the nerdier. This is the nerdiest way that I can get to you on that.
Please.
If Morgan Freeman had been Tom Bombadil in Lord of the Rings,
indeed,
he would have been an amazing Tom Bombadil. But when it was over, you would have been like, still Tom Bombadil. Could have cut it.
Right. Yes.
Anytime now with the Tom Bombadil people. That's amazing.
Yeah.
I always think of the player because I as the Rosencrantz and Guildenstern character, so it's hard for me to imagine him as boring. But that's just because.
Sure. Right.
What other characters do we need to talk about? What are the things do you think are special about this particular Hamlet that we see, Dallas?
Well, I could go back to Ophelia.
I was hoping you would.
We touched on her. I don't think Hamlet's he's not nearly as nasty to her as he is in other.
He does shove her face during a theater scene.
He does. Oh yeah, he does. But like in
Kenneth Branagh's version, he's really physical with her.
Oh yeah, and in others even more so.
I think you can see a direct correlation to her suicide in other versions much better.
Yeah, the scene before the play begins, when he's saying, "Can I put my head in your lap?" and he's being nasty, but he's very quiet. It's like only she can hear that. Whereas you might do that so that he's publicly humiliating, right? I'm not being so rude and out of bounds to you in front of your father, in front of my parents, in front of all these people.
Yeah, I got the sense that her reaction to his my head upon your lap, country matters, all that stuff. Her reaction to that was not so much that what he was doing. It's, oh my God, my brother and my father talked to me about this.
Okay. This is what they said. Yeah.
They never really show. What bothered me about the Hamlet and Ophelia in this movie is I never really see them in love.
I agree. I don't know if they're even supposed to be. I guess they are, but I wouldn't know.
I wouldn't know.
And I think your actors and your director have to make a decision. What has been their relationship before the play begins, and you got to communicate that somehow to your audience. And I don't think it was.
By the way, is this a movie? Have you ever seen a movie where people are less good at sneaking around? Because every time they're sneaking around, Hamlet sees them. Yeah. Every single time. Every single time.
Well, open space in their castle, I guess.
Franco Zeffirelli's way of handling does Hamlet hear this or not is, oh no, he certainly hears it. There he is, right over there.
Right.
In that
and that actually, that ties into something. The one person who is good at sneaking around is Hamlet, because he hears everything.
And no one ever sees him.
And there's even that shot towards the beginning where, like, he's standing over Polonius, like, and he hears everything, even though he's like 30 feet above them, and then Polonius looks up and he's gone.
Yeah.
And you're like,
or the scene where he watches Rosencrantz and Guildenstern go up to Claudius and Gertrude, and he's kind of underneath that doorway, and he screams like, I don't, whatever the Shakespearean equivalent is of you son of a, you bastard, dirty jerk, like. But he screams it. No one hears it.
Yeah,
right.
Fascinating.
He's basically Kaiser Soze. Like he's basically Kaiser Soze.
He needs to limp more. I think that's true. I thought Glenn Close's Gertrude was glorious.
He's good. He's very good.
Yeah.
And I thought Helena Bonham Carter as Ophelia was. I'm so used to seeing her just play a freak.
Mm.
It was kind of amazing to see her play innocent, and she looks so young.
So vulnerable and innocent. Yeah.
Oh,
yes.
Yeah.
I mean, so Dallas, when you teach this, like, how do the girls respond to Ophelia?
It's interesting. I mean, they really do. And I try to introduce as much as I can how Ophelia is still very much alive in popular culture. She shows up in pop songs. There was that book, I guess now.
Reviving Ophelia.
This idea. And you know what? They've all read Romeo and Juliet. They haven't read that many other Shakespeare plays. But you want to say, Shakespeare doesn't write weak women. I mean, Juliet's father tells her, "You don't go out with that guy," and she says, "Heck with you, Dad. I'm going out the window, and I'm going to, go be with Romeo." So it's not like, it just was in Shakespeare's day.
Right.
Ophelia's particularly, but all the I will obey. Just another in the Ethan Hawke in the modern movie. I think that doesn't work very well. It's very hard to see Julia Stiles as a modern Ophelia.
Interesting.
You mean seeing a young lady be that obedient?
Yeah. Yeah, she lives in her own apartment, so she's even more independent. And yet, her father says, "Here, don't see this guy because."
I think that's weird because I think in our generation right now, I mean, you could, and kids our generation or the generation you're teaching right now, can easily relate to a girl who went off to college and then moved back home and is living with her parents. Like, how is that hard to film? Like, come on, guys.
And they've all had those conversations with brothers and fathers, and
yeah. So
watch out for guys like me.
Yeah.
So what about the boys? What about the boys in Hamlet? Or the girls in Hamlet? I mean, how do people respond? How do your teenagers respond to Hamlet? I mean, you mentioned that this is the scenes you show. You want people to see Ophelia. Hamlet is not that much older than them in theory.
Yeah.
What are the things that they really respond to? What are the things that you get the biggest reaction out of?
I think the sarcasm, the wit. They really do like that.
I mean, it's a crazy amount of wordplay. It's a ridiculous amount of wordplay. Anytime he's talking to Polonius, Rosencrantz, or Guildenstern, it's just out of control. Or Claudius, it's out of control.
There is a way to look at Hamlet, and Phil and I have talked about this a lot, seemingly in the past few days and a few weeks. We're sort of living in a meta time. Like we don't do anything. We just comment on things.
Uh-huh.
And I mean, not Andy and I. We do things, but other people comment. Oh, sorry, that's not true.
That's not true at all.
All we do is comment.
We are in the society of Facebook comments and tweeting and we're all very meta these days. And there's I don't think it's a stretch to say that Hamlet is relatable. One of the reasons Hamlet might be relatable today is because he is super meta. I mean, he's a ninja that hears everything in the Gibson version, right?
Yeah.
And yet he doesn't do anything until he already knows he's going to die.
Right.
I mean, that sounds like most of the teenagers I know.
Yeah, that's fair.
Well, they all think they're smarter than everybody else in the room too, right? So that
especially because you're teaching to the creme de la creme. You're teaching to the AP students at a prep school. So I mean, they do think they're smarter than everybody in the room. I've met them. I say it with love, but
because they're right? I mean, they're normally right.
Yeah.
Right. I think
and Mel Gibson's Hamlet is normally right. There are very few rooms he's in where he's not the smartest guy in the room.
That's right.
And what were you saying, Dallas? What was your response?
I think that makes him relatable to all of us as well. He sees Claudius for what he is. He sees Gertrude. He sees even Ophelia.
Is there a general sort of among the teenagers like, can we just get it over with and kill him already? Like, does this movie, can't we just make this?
I gotta be careful that I don't drag the unit out too long. That's a danger.
I think we spent a quarter on it or something ridiculous when I took it in high school.
Yeah.
We were on it.
I probably do about that as well.
Yeah.
Everybody got a little bit tired of it then, but
how long does your compatriot spend on Moby Dick for juniors?
I probably about a quarter or two.
I thought it was a semester, but okay. I mean, she spends a quarter.
She's less than a semester.
Okay. So it's just we're not gonna disparage Moby Dick on this broadcast.
No. I will disparage the class I took on it in college, which was the worst class I took in college.
In high school, Andy, when this is over, I'll ask you who taught that class. In high school, one of my high schools, I went to 3. I won't say which one, but in one of my high schools, he said, "We're not going to read this; it's too long." And then he showed us the Gregory Peck movie.
No.
Yes. That's a true story about the English teacher who was also a football coach.
Wow. Yeah. No.
Wow. Well, like that scene in Hoosiers where Gene Hackman is totally phoning it in as the like what civics teacher. Progress is indoor plumbing or whatever the kid says. He's like, that's great. Glasses open.
To be fair, I had the football coach that was also my world history and geography teacher in freshman year of high school and he was the head football coach. Was such a good world history and geography teacher. Had the best stories that we actually thought he was a former CIA agent.
Wow.
Because he'd always be like, "Well, when we were taking this train into the Soviet Union," and we were like, "What?" Like in the 80s?
I would like for my students to think that I'm a former CIA agent. I doubt anybody does.
Speaking of meta, Andy, Dallas and I, when we were both teaching there was a student that we both had who wrote a short story about all the seniors going on a retreat and being attacked by zombies. And Dallas and me were the teachers that saved the day. Dallas and I apologize. Dallas and I.
Yeah, you were.
Mostly Dallas. Dallas was much. I came in from I swung in from far and then left. Dallas was the big Skywalker of the adventure. So, anyways, just speaking of meta.
Awesome.
What else do we need to talk about this Hamlet? Because I think again it's Hamlet. We could talk forever. But are there anything else we need to hit on?
The last character that we haven't really talked about, and I think it deserves to be talked about the least, frankly, is Alan Bates's Claudius.
Okay.
I mean, again, this is just my reading of it or my opinion on it. I think he fits into the movie. I think he does an admirable job of doing what Zeffirelli wants.
Yes.
But of the only other Hamlet that I remember, although I've seen most, not all of the big ones, the only one I remember is Derek Jacobi in Branagh's Hamlet.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't remember another Claudius that is quite so, like, mustache-twirlingly evil.
Yes, he's the villain, yeah. And,
right?
And the best thing about the character, I think, is how complex he can be. And you don't get that complexity in this
right.
movie.
It's pretty much... Well, there is the moment. I actually thought, and maybe you'll feel differently, but I actually really enjoyed watching him watch the play. Because I think in Zeffirelli's version of Hamlet, Claudius is such a bad guy that he thinks he's getting away with it perfectly. And just like it never really dawns on MG's Hamlet that he's going to die until he dies, I feel like it never really dawns on Claudius that anyone's really catching on. Like, he thinks Gibson's mad, Hamlet's mad, just because he's acting like a jerk. There's no other explanation to him. He never gets it. And
right.
the moment when he's watching the play, a lot of times I've always read that scene as him getting publicly embarrassed and being like, "Stop the play, how dare you."
Right.
But in this it was, oh my God, Hamlet knows. Like, stop the play, I can't see this. And that's not the same thing. And I found that really interesting. And then the next scene you see him, he's legitimately on his knees crying in front of the cross. Like, what have I done, what have I done? Or whatever he's crying about.
Now, I was with you up until the end. Do you think he's crying because he's remorseful, or do you think he's been crying because he's been found out?
Maybe. Okay, fine. Either way, you're right. Either it could just be that he's crying because he was found out. But I'm just fascinated by the idea that that was one of the more riveting play scenes that I've seen of the murderer of whatever it's called, Gonzago or something like that. Right, the Gonzago. Because I think in the past I've always just seen it as Claudius is getting embarrassed or Claudius is getting indignant, how dare you, and it's deeply offensive. But I've never seen it where I thought Claudius was like, oh, wait a minute. He knows, and it's like deeply terrifying to him that anyone could possibly have figured out his little mustache twirling. That's why
That's fair.
Yeah.
Also Pete Postlethwaite, by the way. Always we need to mention Pete Postlethwaite.
Yes.
One of my favorite character actors of all time.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So,
well, I mean, what else is there? It's Hamlet, right?
I love it. I think so. Dallas, Mel Gibson holds his own as Hamlet.
I think he does. Yeah, I think he does. I mean, I would go back to your Moby Dick thing a moment ago. One thing I didn't say when I was talking about why I show all these different clips is I really try to stress to my students that unlike a novel, where that's the only text, I mean, the movie of Moby Dick is not the book of Moby Dick. They're just two different things.
Yeah.
But Hamlet is really, the text is the performance, right? We have this book here, but really the performance is Hamlet. And so it's not that Mel Gibson's Hamlet is right and Kenneth Branagh's is wrong or Olivier's is, it's just they're different Hamlets. And I really just try to go into them, and I think they're all all the ones that I've seen are very solid.
Yeah.
Hamlets.
That's interesting.
My own feelings about the play. There's no movie that fits perfectly with I like this and I like this, but I think it's
so
an absolute
personal.
I think it's an interesting take, and I think it works a lot more often than not.
And what I find I'm glad you said that, because I think in our conversation here, I think I walked into this conversation thinking of the movie a lot more inconsistently, and now I think that even if it's not a great interpretation, it has its own logic.
Yeah.
Which I'm not sure I thought coming into this conversation.
I think the Oedipal thing, I think, is the only thing I don't know that I can figure out the logic. I'm not quite sure what they're saying about that.
Right. I think that's fair.
That's really interesting.
For him or something that.
What's interesting to me about that, and I agree with your take on it. Now, I mean, you made me think more about it. But pretty much the only thing I knew about this version of Hamlet was they play up the Oedipal stuff. That's. I mean, maybe I'm talking to the wrong people.
Oh, okay. So, Clement, Dallas, you're gonna dig this. I have a theory. I don't know if you've ever watched any of our Project Melways. I wouldn't if I were you, but they're great. Okay. So I have a theory, which is like, do you remember back in and I know you're a big baseball fan. Are you ready for are you ready? He's a Cardinals fan, Andy. He's a big Cards fan. Andy's a Houston Astros fan, so don't take it personally. He's out of your division. He belongs to me now. He's mine. I get to torture him for a while.
Wait. Dallas, you're a fan of whom?
Cardinals.
Okay, no, that's okay. Yeah. If it were the Cubs, I might have to cut off the.
Click. But so Dallas, I have this. Do you remember back in like the turn of the century, like 2000, like the early 2000s, when the Yankees would keep getting these basically either has-beens or middling players, and the moment these guys put on the pinstripes, like their batting average jumped like 15 points for no reason. Yeah. And it was just frustrating. It was like, as I was a Sox fan at the time, I was like, you can't. This isn't that guy, really. I have a theory. What? I have a theory that in Mel Gibson movies, Mel Gibson makes the women he's with more attractive. Sissy Spacek in The River becomes attractive for maybe the first time. Sigourney Weaver in The Year of Living Dangerously is stunning. Piper Laurie in this terrible movie called Tim is actually kind of pretty in a very interesting way. And I think this is the latest in that. I think Glenn Close is... I've never thought of her as attractive, and I thought she was absolutely stunning in this movie. And like, mesmerizing to watch.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, she is a handsome woman.
She is a handsome woman, but that is not without its charms, my friend.
No. But
so
in
was
this
Katharine
movie,
Hepburn.
Yes.
By the way, Dallas, Andy Roth was the one who introduced me to the idea that a woman could be handsome. And I was like, he was describing a woman. He's like, well, she's a very handsome woman. And I was like, what does that even mean? And he goes, I mean, look at her. She's a handsome woman. And I was like, you need to compare that to something else. And he was like, I really can't. Is what it is. And so my whole concept of handsome women is surrounded by Andy's description of them as handsome, Phil. Like, it is what it is.
I'm honored. I didn't know that.
Before we go,
yeah.
I just want to say this. Lethal Weapon 2, Bird on a Wire, Air America, Hamlet, Lethal Weapon 3. This is the filmography of one Melvin Gibson. Come on.
One of these things is so much like the other one.
Do you think when Hamlet was over, he's like, seriously, I need to get back to working on a Lethal Weapon movie, like post-haste?
Right. I had just a ridiculous haircut for too long.
I wonder if I'm very curious. I'd love to see a making of on this because Gibson is famous for doing pranks and practical jokes on sets. So I think I think the way he plays Hamlet fits his persona really well. I think this fits really well into his Yeah, the only other thing I would say is I just, for the love of God, they could have had a soundtrack. Would have been nice. I mean, really. There's no soundtrack in this movie.
It's very odd, yeah.
Kenneth Branagh calls Patrick Doyle up and says, make just a totally rad soundtrack, and Patrick Doyle's like, on it.
Okay.
God, the soundtrack for Henry V, Kenneth Branagh's Henry V is,
Oh, it's killer. It's amazing.
One of my favorites. In fact, Andy and I did a podcast the other we talked about soundtrack scores, and I didn't mention Patrick Doyle, and that's my bad. My B. All right.
I could watch, and it's the whole thing, right? It's
the No Nobis Domine, the No Nobis Domine, when they're carrying the bodies at the end of the St. Crispin's Day battle.
Yes.
Just beautifully done, yeah.
I mean, I could watch that entire, from his St. Crispin's Day speech through the end of the Agincourt battle. I could watch that.
Yes. Yes.
Just on a continuous loop.
Yes.
Totally. Yeah.
Dallas, I hope you'll come back and join us sometime. This has been quite a blast.
I would love to. It's been very much fun.
If I can, before we say goodbye, if I can step outside of the discussion of this particular movie and tell our viewers what to expect the next 3 weeks in Project Melway. Please. Next week, Lethal Weapon 3. The magic is still back.
The magic is back again.
Magic is back. Forever Young and The Man Without a Face. Every time I hear that movie, the title of that movie, I think of the song Eyes Without a Face. So I'm like, Man Without a Face. I don't know why I do that, but I do.
Clearly, Forever Young, I'm going to be talking about the Dylan song for a long time.
Forever?
Forever Young. Forever.
Nice. So that's what to expect the next 3 weeks in Project Melway. Dallas, thank you so much. This has been a blast.
It's been a blast for me. Thanks for having me on.
I'm a little discomfited by the fact that we can't seem to have a guest on that isn't more awesome than we are. That's
what we. But we're the conduits, man. We are the conduits. We make them comfortable. We get the talent settled, and make them feel comfortable. Yes. And then just let them shine.
And allow them to shine. Allow them to shine, baby.
It is, Dallas. It's an honor. It is. I mean it. I mean it, brother. It's an honor to have you on this show, and I'm looking forward to. I'm gonna watch this episode later. I watch them all because I'm very vain, but I'm really gonna watch this one several times because I'm gonna learn from you. I'm gonna memorize your Nietzsche quote.
Yeah, good one, Nietzsche.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun.
Guys, this has been another Second Breakfast podcast, another installment of Project Melway brought to you by the Gibsonian Institute. Hamlet, done by our boy MG. I'm Andy Roth, alongside Dallas Clemens and Phil Duvall. We'll see you again real soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.